Welcome to Crafty Jones and the Coiled Yarn Bowl project. After you gather all your supplies, we're going to start by cutting the first piece of yarn. I usually cut a piece about 3 feet or so long. Do not cut the jute. Keep the jute on its roll there. And then you're going to thread the yarn needle. You're going to take both end of the yarn and the end of the jute. You're going to pull the yarn out a little longer than what you have for the jute in your hand. And you're going to use that yarn end to just start wrapping. And you're going to wrap away from you, just like I'm doing there. Wrap for about an inch or so. It really depends on the thickness and weight of your yarn and your jute. So you may need more wraps if you have a very thin yarn, or less if you have a heavier yarn. And then you're going to fold it and make a little loop like so. You want to keep everything nice and tight together. And you're going to take your working yarn, put that aside, and grip all the other ends actually together in your left hand. And then you're going to start wrapping towards yourself. So for the rest of the project, I will wrap towards myself or counterclockwise. So you're going to start wrapping, pulling your fingers back as you go, and give yourself maybe double or so the size of your initial loop. And then you're going to start the coil. And you're going to fold that inwards, and you're going to be pinching everything with your left hand and then working on everything with your right. So you're going to take your yarn needle and you're going to thread it through that center loop. Now the yarn that I'm using for this video is not consistent, and so there are sections, if I pull them, it'll pull apart. So you'll see that there are many times that I will anchor stitch, which is the stitch I'm calling that goes through the center loop there. I might go around twice just to give it extra stability. If you're using, a traditional worsted weight, like acrylic yarn or something like that, it's a little stronger. Once around is plenty. So you'll just continue to anchor stitch into that center loop, and you'll be wrapping 3 to 4 times in between. It really depends, again, on the thickness of your yarn, the thickness as well of your jute. Okay, so you're going to continue doing a few wraps and then anchor stitching into that center loop. There will be points during your project that you're going to want to cut the yarn or the jute cord, which I'm about to do here. As you cut, I always like to cut at an angle so that it just transitions smoother into the bowl as you work, and it's not just an abrupt cut off there. So you keep working around again into that center loop. Anchor stitch 1 or 2 times depending on the type of yarn you're using. And you're going to just go all the way around until you complete the circle. Okay, so now we've gone all the way around the center loop, and we're going to continue to grow the bowl by wrapping some more, and then you're going to anchor into the row below instead of the center loop. And that's going to be the pattern from here on out. I like to wrap 3 to 7 stitches depending on where the anchor loop lands. I prefer to stagger the anchor loops, so I just kind of figure it as I go how many need to happen. And so that's all you're going to do is just continue wrapping and anchoring, wrapping and anchoring. Now soon you're going to come to an end where you're going to need to add more yarn. So let's do that. All right, so I've added several rows, as you can see here, and I'm going to add another piece of yarn. I'm going to cut it about the same size that you had before, 3 or so feet, and then thread it in your yarn needle. You're going to take the end and you're just going to combine it with the cord and the end of the last piece you had. Again, every time you see me trimming any yarn, I will be doing it at an angle so that it transitions smoother. And you're just going to grab it and start wrapping towards yourself to tighten everything together, and then go in really close to your last anchor stitch and just start it wrapping, holding everything tight together, figuring out where you want to attach that next anchor stitch, and then continue on. Really simple. Sometimes after I add another piece of yarn, I will do a few wrap and anchor stitches, and then I might trim up the yarn, the ends that are exposed. When I do that, I will not trim them at the same length. I will still stagger them because, again, I think the staggering and the cutting of the angles, it all participates in keeping things smoother and less obvious where yarn starts and stops. So now I'm going to start building up the walls at this point, and you can see you're continuing in the same manner. You're just kind of changing the angle of where you anchor stitch. So I'm pulling up that cord onto the top of the row below instead of to the side, and then anchoring the same. Now, as your bowl grows and the walls grow up, depending on the shape that you want, you can really get the anchor stitch and wraps down to a more precise pattern because you're not needing to add or subtract stitches really. So, but I do continue to do the same thing in the sense that I like to stagger them. So I will make, I make that happen as I go around. If you're doing a bowl that you want the walls to kind of splay out instead of going straight up, this step here will be a little more subtle, and you can just form it. It's very slowly forming in your hands. So you have time to decide as you go how you want it to be shaped. And you just continue on like this until you get it to the size that you want it to be. Okay, so I added a few rows and built up the walls a little bit, and this is just a little tiny bowl, so I'm ready to do my trim edge on it. So I'm going to add the yarn just like I did with the other yarn. This yarn is a lot thinner weight yarn, and I love the contrast of the heavier yarn and then the thinner yarn on top. When you wrap the thinner yarn, you'll notice that it almost makes a more solid looking piece, and partially probably as well because of the color is more solid on this particular yarn. Anyway, I'm wrapping. When I do the edge piece, that one, especially because I'm changing the color, then I really do want to have a constant pattern. So I pick, the number of wraps that I think will look nice in between each anchor stitch, and then continue on that same pattern, not adding or subtracting wraps with that. so that each anchor stitch is evenly spaced around the bowl, because it will obviously stand out considering that I'm choosing contrasting color yarn. So I just continue that all the way around. You'll see that there's more wrapping going on because this yarn is so thin. So, and I also do 2 wraps on this yarn for the anchor stitch, partly because it's thinner, but also I want you to be able to see the stitch going down into, the row below. So that's why I do 2 here, but it's all up to you. I'll just continue around till I get back around to the beginning. All right, so now we're back at the beginning, and the last anchor stitch I did was right into the top of the first anchor stitch, so they kind of line up. Then I'm going to wrap. Just wrap the cord as long as you want it. This is a trial and error thing for me. I'll wrap some, fold it in, see if I need more or less, kind of, go for a while. I'll eventually end up cutting the cord once I know that I'm not going to need anything longer than that. Wrap it to the length I want in order to have the loop size that I want. And then I'm going to cut the cord, but I'm not going to do that until I attach the loop. So I'm tightening everything up, maybe take away a few wraps, whatever, to get it positioned just right. And then I'm going to attach it to the last row. And I'm going to wrap around that row and the cord. And I'm going to do that a couple times and get it nice and tight on there. And then I'm going to trim up the cord next. And my goal here is to take bulk out of it so that it transitions smoothly. So I hack away a lot of that cord, and you can see the angle I cut kind of to the side up into it. So again, with the goal of making the transition smoother, so that it looks like it just kind of melds back in to that base row. And then I'm going to wrap and wrap and wrap until that cord is disappeared. Okay, now I'm going to bring the yarn on the inside of the bowl. And then I'm going to go into that last anchor stitch and tie 2 knots. Here, I think I just did 1 in the video, but I do it twice. Make them tight and snip off the end. And I use fray check, but you could use probably any kind of clear glue just to reinforce that knot. And then I just tuck the ends away. And that little glue also helps the ends stay in there and live in there for eternity. Okay, if you want to know more about this project or maybe other ones I have coming, check out craftyjones.com.